Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of 5 Elements of Success Player Development Series. I'm Roger Nick, founder of the Junior Golf Hub and host. I'm here again this week with Tyler Campbell and Dennis Hillman at Golf Performance Center live here in the Custom Club shop. So we want to make sure that you guys are keeping this interactive, so make sure send in your questions, comments to YouTube chat. Before we get started, COVID-19, we want to make sure that we're safe here in the audience or in the studio. Make sure you guys are safe out there in the audience. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for all of you guys who've also done the PDI self-assessment. We really appreciate all the feedback and comments that we've gotten. So it's really been really worth our while to do this to help you reach your ultimate goals in your journey. We have another quiz this week, giving away an Odyssey Stroke Lab Tuttle putter. The first one, actually winner is going to be randomly selected out of the hat. The question of this week is going to be, as a junior golf athlete, should you grow into your clubs or out of your golf clubs? So remember, as a junior golf athlete, should you grow into your clubs or out of your golf clubs? So that's the question. So stay tuned to the rest of the show. You're going to hear that answer. We're going to give some clues there as well. Tyler, last week.
Yeah, absolutely, Roger. Last week we had a great episode. If anybody has missed any of the previous episodes, they're available on juniorgolfhub.com/5elements. Last week we were excited to have Dr. Josh Brand on the show. He's a clinical psychologist, and he really, talked to us about the mental approach to the game. The very first thing that we covered was the feeling of judgment. And when someone goes through the PDI self-assessment, it's not going to be uncommon to feel a little bit judged. Anytime we're under the microscope, whether it's in school, in business, or in our golf game. Here in front of the camera, absolutely. You get that feeling of judgment, and essentially that's a normal feeling. The more you put yourself in that atmosphere or that environment, the more comfortable you get. And I think it's important to look at judgment as an opportunity, not so much as something you want to shy away from, but something that you're a little bit more, leaning in, if you will. Dr. Brand also talked a lot about intrinsic versus extrinsic factors, and how you really have to be playing this game for yourself. It starts from the inside, and you don't want to be playing it for external factors, beyond just the passion for the game. And then, lastly, we talked about confidence and how that really is the mental skill that has the biggest impact on performance. That was our quiz question last week. We were excited to give away a tailor-made sim driver. So again, as Roger mentioned, pay attention to the remainder of the show for our prize this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tyler. Great recap. We're going to be talking about the fifth of 5 elements this week, the 5 elements of success, equipment. So are you getting fit properly for the equipment and how important that is, and as it relates to confidence as well. Exploration, also we want to make sure that we're talking about junior fittings versus adult fittings. That's something that we see quite often. Dennis, we talk and we see a lot about juniors coming in and looking for the right equipment, and as a coach and how that affects them and what they're doing in their development. So can you talk why equipment is really that important?
Yeah, it is really important. We know that ultimately golf is a physical game, and we had a great episode last week with Dr. Brand talking about the mental skills and how important those are. And there's no question, but at the end of the day, golf is a physical game. So understanding your physical limitations and how that's going to dictate the movement in your swing and those swing tendencies that you have is really important. But also understanding the implement that you have in your hand and how that affects results is really important. And not only that, also how that implement in your hand is going to affect how you move as well, just like your physical limitations. So when we look at junior golfers that are still growing and developing as athletes, those clubs that they have in their hands are really having a big influence on that development. So ideally what we're looking for is a club that you can move fast and learn to develop speed, control it, and ideally not put yourself at risk of injury. So that's kind of the trifecta, if you will. If you can have that equipment correct all the way through your development, it's going to have a huge impact and a positive impact. What we see that's very common is juniors that come in and they have clubs that are too long and too heavy, and that's really detrimental to their development. In fact, Kyle Berkshire, who's the long drive champion, that a lot of you guys may know, and maybe you've seen the image of him right there at Impact. He's got his ball speed up to 231, 232 right now. So, and he actually talked recently. I listened to him talking with his junior coach. He was actually a competitive junior golfer, very good player. And his coach, Bernie Najar, and he always had light equipment all the way through, and that really helped him. He said he really felt like that helped him create clubhead speed.
And he's got some speed for sure.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hit it 400 yards without some good clubhead speed and understanding how to leverage the ground. So this week, as we were talking about equipment, and we've got Nick Novak, our director of custom clubs, on, and I knew as a coach you work well with him in making sure that all the players get fit properly, throughout their development. We also have Alex Hume, one of our lead junior coaches, that's going to be on the show here and shortly. And that's why it's so important. I mean, part of the 5 elements for us is making sure those things always fit together, because it is always evolving.
Yeah, no question. I think it's not like this fixed thing, let's get my equipment right and it'll be there forever. Maybe like when you're an adult and your shoes, it's probably not going to change, right? But it's constantly changing as you develop your swing and you get stronger and things change. So it really needs to be monitored and treated like anything else in this process. And that's important.
Yeah, so let's welcome in Nick Novak, Director of Custom Clubs here at the Golf Performance Center. Nick, as Tyler mentioned earlier, last week we talked with Dr. Brand about confidence. And we also know, again, confidence bleeds through everything. So knowing that you have the right equipment in the bag and that you look down and you go, man, I really feel good about this, that means something. So going through a fitting experience with you, that's something that you keep in the top of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We found out last week just how important confidence is for a developing junior, and knowing that you have the right equipment in the bag gives you the peace of mind to know that if you execute your job, that the equipment's going to perform the way it should. And that's really the beginning of having confidence in your equipment.
Yeah, and because as we were just talking about with Dennis, that you work with all of our coaches here throughout the developmental pathway. So we're going to have on Alex Hume here in a second talking about the fundamental groups and the learning to play, which is really typical age groups between 7 and 14. And that's a lot of kind of time, if you will, between development and what they need to do from an equipment standpoint. So that's important to understand that, again, you're not going to fit someone at 9 years old and think they're going to have that equipment until they're maybe even 11. Right?
Yeah, correct.
Right, so that confidence is really important. So let's welcome Alex Hume, lead director, lead coach, if you will, with the fundamental group and learn and play here at the Golf Performance Center. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Alex, you see a lot of juniors coming in, and you see what's in their bag quite often, and you talk to them, and obviously talk to the parents, because that's who's dropping these young kids off. Mm-hmm. But what are you seeing in their golf bags that you kind of go, oh, that's interesting?
Well, we see a move to those adult clubs at an early age. So, starting at 7 years old, through the 13 age range is kind of where I specialize. We see them get to the 8, 10-year-old age, and they have the adult club heads in their bag, and it's important to know what effects that has.
Yeah, and it's one of those things we're seeing, maybe, some parents out there and juniors, I mean, you love, obviously, we're not saying, Titleist and TaylorMade, they make great products or Ping or all of that, but we're not saying it's bad, but it's interesting what happens when you see juniors coming in that are, let's say, tournament players versus recreational players, and that quick jump to those major manufacturers.
Yeah, so they're playing tournaments. We usually see it at that age when they just start getting competitive, and it's I think they're being judged out there, like we mentioned a little while ago, and they might see somebody else with those adult clubs, and I want to hit it that far too. So that's kind of the age range we see that jump to those clubs.
Yeah, so they start going in and saying, oh my God, I see this player, hitting it past me, or maybe scoring better, but maybe not understand why that's, taking place. Because I think there's as I know you guys talk about this a lot, that false negative, if you will, of getting some distance, but maybe that's not true distance if you're seeing that transition club set.
Well, that's correct. When we're looking at the specs, the length, the weight, the loft, the lie, you're right, it is a false positive there. So we're switching to adult heads. They have different lies, different lofts. Many times the loft of that golf club is as much as 2 clubs difference between that junior club. So yes, it appears that club's going a further distance. It's really not.
Yeah. So Nick, again, having to go through this experience, and when Alex is referring the parents and the kid up to go through the fitting experience, that's some news that sometimes you have to talk to the parents about. Hey, listen, we understand that you want to move to this adult equipment, if you will, but it may not be the best move. And so how do you deal with that?
Yeah, largely it's educational for the parents, kind of letting them know that you can't just take an adult club and chop it down with a lightweight shaft and give it to a junior thinking that's going to be really good for their development. There's a lot of other factors at play here. There's a big picture, and what we do, what we found here is our quarterly evaluations. We're constantly monitoring the students' progress and their development, physical and their golf skills, and we're working with the coaches to make sure that we're giving them the right equipment, and sometimes just educating the parents to let them know that the lies are different on adult clubs and junior clubs, and the length, loft are also much different.
So definitely factors there that need to consider that maybe they don't look at because they're just seeing maybe the kid is just playing better than my kid right now or something to that effect. So Alex, as you're going through with juniors and their parents and seeing this equipment change, if you will, or wanting to change, you notice that the player maybe not need that necessarily, because we know that out on tour, guys are playing with maybe 6 clubs in a round typically.
Yeah.
I mean, you might hit, only hit 6 of your clubs out of the 14 that's in your bag. How many clubs do you actually need? How many clubs do you need to play the game?
Well, you only need 1 club to play the game.
Wait a minute.
In fact.
Hey man, wait a minute. What are you talking about? 1 club?
Well, you have a golf ball, you need a golf club, and there's a hole somewhere out there. So, do you need a full set of clubs? Not really. And we're saying that jokingly, but there is some truth to it.
Yeah, I think we're too quick to kind of rush and think that we have a full set of clubs in the bag as a junior golfer, especially, again, in the fundamental group that you're in, so age group between 8 and about 10, and then you've got the learning to play, so maybe 9 to 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like I've got to get 14 clubs in my bag, and I've got to look like a tour player to be a tour player. So I think it's really one of those things that we don't want people to rush out and think that I've got to have a full set of clubs.
Yeah, well, it's important to know, what's behind that and what effects that's going to have on development. So we look at, the set makeup. At a young age, we want to see maybe a pitching wedge, a couple irons, and something they can hit off the tee.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference for them also, because there's other factors that go into having a full set of clubs, meaning the weight of the bag and where they're playing. And we'll talk a little bit more about equipment, the other parts of equipment, here a little bit later. But, Nick, so you're coming in, junior comes in and says, or parent says, hey, I want to get fit. What do you need to know? What do they need to know about junior fitting experience versus an adult fitting experience that really makes a big difference in what they end up getting in their bag?
Yeah, juniors are still in fully developmental mode, and there's optimal windows where they're going to be developing speed, and it's important that in those windows that they have equipment that's designed to maximize that performance. And that's one of the biggest differences that we do here with our quarterly evaluations, is to make sure that they're never growing into their clubs, they're always growing out of their clubs.
Yeah, that's hint, hint. Hopefully, maybe the audience was listening to that one. That was really good. But I know you work with Tyler and Kyle on the performance side of things to understand that, because that is important. Because length's obviously going to affect how they get into posture. Posture is going to affect the length of the clubs dynamically and statically. And as you said, speed is a huge factor in that. So when you're looking at a junior golfer, when you're going to a fitting, are you putting them on TrackMan or what? So how much technology do you use for a junior golfer?
Yeah, we're really lucky. I mean, we have all the technology we need to measure everything properly. We're measuring the club with the 3D motion capture. We're measuring the club face on Foresight GC Quad, and we're measuring the ball flight on TrackMan. And so we're giving them the full experience. We're measuring everything, and that's the main thing, is to make sure you're not guessing when you're doing this stuff. The equipment largely bridges the gap between the golf swing and the ball flight. And so if their equipment is not right, the juniors, they're resilient. They're going to find a way to get the ball to go high and straight, and a lot of times it's at the expense of their technique.
Yeah, and the expense of their long-term development.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we're really, hold dear, is we want to make sure that we're not hampering their long-term development.
Absolutely.
So Alex, Nick said something there about discovery and learning to play, and I know from the fundamentals group and learning to play, you have guys out there and the kids out there playing golf and just discovering and really not giving them a tremendous amount of feedback necessarily. Is it because you want them to understand, like, what is the equipment in their bag and how does it work? And I know one of the things that we see a lot is players come in, or juniors come in and go, I need a 64-degree wedge or lob wedge in my bag so I can, play better. What would you say to, a kid out there that says, hey, I've got to have a 64-degree wedge in my bag?
Well, I would say it's affecting development. So when we look at that young age, we want them to start off with something they're going to develop good, say, short game skills if we're talking about the wedge, and we want less loft, something like a pitching wedge. They can learn to add loft to that club versus taking that 64 degree and de-lofting it. That's going to promote some bad techniques. So it's important, and also the set makeup too. We want less clubs because that really promotes creativity and those different shot making, different distances with the same club, that type of thing.
Yeah, I know. I go back, and I'm a huge Seve Ballesteros fan, in the sense of, he used to talk about the stories. He'd go out on the beach near his home and hit golf balls off the beach sand, and he would take 3 irons and open them up and hit them out of bunkers, and, just to see how it reacted. It wasn't that he was going to go out and go, I got to play every shot with 3, but he did. He literally just went out and tried to play and discover what each club could do and how he could manipulate it. And I think that's one of the things that juniors don't seem to do that often anymore.
Well, there's so many stories like that too, of players that have been successful with, they had one club to play with. So
Yeah. So we're going to be talking a lot more about equipment as we go into this educational series. But, there's other factors to the equipment here. So we talk about equipment, and it's not just the clubs that we talk about. We talk about golf balls, we talk about shoes, maybe the bag, and also, maybe the push carts that we see a lot of. Yeah. So, but Nick, as a fitting part of this, we need to know that they have the right golf ball too, right? Or is there a right golf ball for a junior golfer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the golf ball is the only piece of equipment you're going to use on every shot. And there's a wide variety of golf balls on the market. And, they're all slightly different. They're all designed to do different things, like launch high or low and spin high and low. And the main thing is making sure that you have the right golf ball for your junior so they can develop and progress properly.
And one of those factors we see often, and we hate, I don't want to say hate, I think that's the wrong one. Golf is expensive. It's an expensive sport, and you talk about buying premium golf balls versus maybe, quote unquote, not premium golf balls, but there's not a lot of difference these days in the manufacturing of, the golf balls. So what would you recommend there from that perspective?
Yeah, there's a lot of great options out there, and there used to be maybe one great golf ball manufacturer, and now they've come a long way. Other manufacturers are making some really good golf balls, so there's some room for preference in there. You don't have to have the premium golf ball to shoot a low score out there.
Yeah. Alex, and again, you're on the course with a lot of our junior golfers, and you see quite a few junior golfers, that come through the academy. There's a lot of things in their golf bag. What do you see from a golf ball perspective?
Well, everything across the board, but mainly, they get to that competitive age. We see the top dollar golf ball in their bag, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, we're not saying it's a bad thing. Just make sure that you are getting the right golf ball for where you are in your development, and it's not good or bad. It's just one of those things we like to see you kind of pay attention to. So having the right golf ball does help. Again, back to having the right equipment really helps out in every aspect of it. With that being said, now we talk about you can play with one club, or you can play with 14 clubs or 6 clubs. But that affects the bag, right? So what do I have in my golf bag, and how important the right golf bag is for a junior golfer?
Yeah, like you said, if you're a young player and you have 14 clubs in your bag, that's going to be a pretty heavy golf bag. And the size of the bag really matters too. And the companies these days are doing a better job, whether it's US Kids or Ping Golf, in creating those smaller golf bags that's a little bit easier to handle, but it can have an effect. And then we get on these hilly golf courses, and you take that bag and put it on a push cart, you're going to wear yourself out pretty quick. So I would pay attention to the golf course you're playing, if you're pushing or not. And we're in the Northeast, so we see a lot of hilly golf courses around here.
Yeah, we do. So I know one of the things we did years ago is just kind of take a look at what happened with having a push cart. So we're talking about push cart as a piece of the equipment, so
sure,
having a tool, and we're not saying they're bad. We're just saying, hey, take a look at what's happening out there, because we know when you load up a push cart or load up a bag, you've got golf balls in there, maybe you got a rain suit in there, or whatever it may be, sandwiches, hopefully with, maybe mom and dad's carrying the sandwiches, but it still gets heavy. And on that push cart, and we know that above a 5% grade, we know that gravity is pushing against you at about 4 times the weight. So that becomes really heavy on a junior golfer who hasn't developed maybe core stability or even good range of motion through their hips and knees as they're growing. So that has an effect on their overall score and performance.
Yeah, and it's great you mentioned nutrition too. You know, hydration and having the right food in you can make a huge difference too if you're pushing that bag all day.
Yeah, and food's part of the equipment. Yeah,
sure it is.
Right? I mean,
absolutely.
Consider that. Maybe Tyler and Kyle would say otherwise, but so Nick, so we've got a good handle on what the equipment is for juniors, but transitional sets. Now we get the higher level junior. They've gone now through our learning to play. They're in our competitive group, maybe wanting to play college golf, higher speeds. What would be a good recommendation that you see with the better player that is moving through this development?
Yeah, there's that typical tweener age where they're out of the junior clubs and their club speed is showing signs of being able to move it pretty quickly. And maybe a chart might show you that they're ready for a stiff flex or a heavy shaft, but there's a lot of factors at play when you're going to fit a junior golfer. They're still developing, they still have not finished growing, and they're still getting stronger. And the most important thing is making sure that you have something that is going to give them the best chance to swing the right way and to move the club in a nice, fundamentally sound way.
Yeah, and in order to swing the golf club faster, and Tyler talks about this often, and we talk, it's a big part of our philosophy, is the ground up and using ground forces and so forth. And that has something to do with the golf shoes, right? Or shoes, or the proper footwear. So, understanding, as we go up and develop into that higher level player, knowing and understanding proper footwear has an effect on that too. And you see that throughout the Fundamentals and Learning to Play group.
Absolutely. Well, first, it's important to have that shoe fit the foot. That's the first part of the equation. But second, it does have an effect on how we use the ground and how that affects the ankle and foot and its mobility. So.
Yeah, and I always go back, and I use John Wooden a lot because I love him as a coach, and he talks a lot about, again, just having the right equipment, having, putting the right socks on, the right shoes, because that's going to, definitely affect their performance and their ability to practice properly. And not having the right shoes on, for example, is definitely going to hinder their ability to move into their golf swing or stay into maybe golf postures properly. And now obviously that will affect how they get fit or how they transfer speed.
Absolutely. And the equipment as a whole, that goes back to what we talk about a lot, and that's the preparation process.
Right.
And understanding what that effect has on every area of that equipment.
Yeah. So as we talk about that and we talk about how we're kind of, moving forward in development with the equipment, and, I know you and Nick talk a lot about what you need to do and what the common characteristics are of a good fitting for a junior golfer. But there are probably a couple that maybe we don't pay enough attention to. What are the two major ones that you're looking for and helping people understand what they are?
Yeah, well, I would certainly say loft and lie are the two big ones we don't really consider in a junior set. And when we move to that adult set, that head is made for an adult. So adults are taller, that club needs to be more upright. And a junior is going to make compensations in how they move to get that club that's too upright back to impact. So just know what effects that's going to have on your child's development, or if juniors out there are listening, just make sure you have that right equipment and it's fit for you.
Yeah, and Nick, I know as you're measuring that, and that's one reason we know that, so we're seeing those things based on the measurement, so it's not something we're guessing at. And I know a lot of people, and we're not a huge believer in saying, hey, technology is for everyone. And again, it's not the science of coaching, it's really the tools we use. And back to our equipment, right? Mm-hmm. So we use that equipment to really measure those things that we need to understand better so we give the best information, and you give the best information not only to the junior player or the adult, but also to the coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. There's things like Alex referred to, like lie angle, and there's also loft, and how that changes. The juniors don't quite have the club speed, so where the irons can separate quite like the adults, and so they may not need a 4-iron or 5-iron and 6-iron, and it's important that the coaches are educated in this also, so that they can help the junior with their set makeup to make sure that they have all the right tools that they need to shoot the lowest score on the course.
Yeah. Parents, if you're going through this process with your junior golfers, make sure that you're reaching out to maybe a local PGA professional, someone who understands development and understands good coaching and why going through a proper fit for them. Again, the parts of the equipment we just talked about, they're all important to the junior player and also the adult player for that matter. So just make sure you're asking the right questions. And before we leave, we have some questions from the audience about the equipment, so we're looking forward to that as well. So, if we have some questions from the audience, Andrew?
Yeah, we have some questions. What lie angle is optimal for a golfer who prefers to hit a draw?
All right, that's a good question, guys. Who's going to take that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right.
You know, a lie angle, largely, you want it to be correctly fit no matter what the ball flight. You know, the lie angle definitely matters, and the more loft you have on the club, the more it matters. But, you know, the most important thing is that the lie angle fits you. You know, there's not one perfect lie angle for every person that plays a draw, but there's a perfect lie angle for every golfer.
Awesome.
The next question is, I think I've played with the wrong equipment for a few years. Is there anything I can do to fix some of my swing habits and hit the ball farther?
Another good question.
Absolutely, you can. Yeah, so it's, again, back to our long-term development talk. You know, we're still trying to fit you, even if you haven't been fit in the past, we're trying to fit you for that long term if you do have those goals of getting better and improving. So, yeah, if you haven't been, we're going to start now and build those tools for that long term.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of great questions today. Another one is, regarding shoes, other than a good fit, what are considerations? Spikeless, size of the sole, hard or soft bottoms, anything else?
Yeah, I would say definitely the size or the sole, how that's going to affect the foot in terms of mobility of the ankle and the foot, how that's applied to the ground makes a huge difference, and there's not one fit for everyone. Everybody's different. So.
And I think since we're talking about junior golfers right now, it's not a bad thing that maybe they do wear some sneakers or tennis shoes versus golf shoes that aren't good fits. I mean, I think that's a misnomer that, hey, I have to have, you know, this perfect golf shoe. I think it's really important that you can go out there and have a good tennis shoe on, and it actually gives you the best support for movement in the golf swing that's going to maximize or make that movement efficient. So that's another one.
Maybe one more question here. If a golfer is trying to maximize distance, would it be recommended to buy clubs which have always strong lofts?
That's a good question. Always strong loft, I think, Nick?
No, you know, loft largely influences the ball flight, and there's an optimal ball flight based on your club speed. So, you know, loft is not the end-all be-all, and a lot of times not enough loft may result in more distance, like we touched on earlier, like a false positive. It might look like you're hitting the ball much further with a stronger lofted club, but there's a lot that goes into that. Is it carry distance? Is it total distance? Is it going through the optimal window? Are they going to have to manipulate their swing to hit it high enough to hold the green?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, you know, we see with a lot of our junior players, because they don't have enough speed necessarily to get the ball up high enough. You know, as Nick just mentioned, you know, having a manipulation of that. So just make sure that you are getting the right fit, the right lofts, you know, for that. So really important.
Absolutely.
And one more question. What if I have not been fit properly as a junior? I am now in high school and want to play college golf.
Yeah, you know, I think it's never too late to start. It doesn't always mean that your equipment is wrong just because you haven't gotten fit, but you know, I would say the number one thing is to go somewhere and get measured. Get your equipment measured and get your, you know, all your stuff measured, so that way you know if you have something good that's helping promote development and long-term athleticism, or if you have something that might be hindering your performance.
Yeah, and I'll go back to what Dennis said earlier, looking at Kyle Berkshire and talking about, you know, using light equipment. You know, reverse engineer that process and think about, where do I want to be at that, you know, developmental age, you know, college age, and what do I need to do to get there? And I think that, you know, to your point, is looking at the physical aspect of it as well, development.
Is there an ideal club head speed before a child should move out of junior clubs?
Oh, another good question.
It is a good question, and let's take U.S. Kids, for example. They have two different sets of clubs based on speed. So they do measure according to speed.
Yeah.
So.
Have you seen an ideal number there?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really easy to see a high club speed and to want to move that athlete into a stiff flex or a heavier shaft. But, you know, I would say that there's not one club speed that is like a determining factor for moving them into the adult head. That every child, you know, we use a developmental age rather than their calendar age because there's a lot of things at play. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So, you know, the chart might say, hey, they're ready for an adult club or a stiff flex shaft, but, you know, I would say go see a professional and make sure and work with the coach together to make sure you're planning for long term.
Yeah, and again, it's playing the game. It's not just playing numbers. It's playing a game. And you want to hit the shots that you want to hit. And, advanced players, if you're an advanced player and you've got that kind of advanced speed, you're probably trying to hit certain shots. So I think that's a big factor as well. So, make sure that you're looking and asking the right questions to your professionals. So thanks so much for those questions. Those are great questions this week. We'd like to continue having those coming in. Again, even when the show's off, please feel free to email us, give us a call, tweet us, Twitter, whatever that's called. Also, chime in on YouTube. It's great. We'd love to have you guys, comment more. Again, we're here to help you in this educational series on your development and what you can do to hopefully reach your ultimate goals. So I know at the beginning of the show we asked a question. Should an athlete or golf athlete grow into their clubs or out of their golf clubs? So hopefully we got some responses. And I think, Andrew, you said we got several responses.
We did. And the winner today is Ryan Ruzek.
R-U-Z-E-K. Congratulations.
Ryan Ruzek, congratulations.
Nice
You won
job.
yourself a nice Odyssey putter. So we'll make sure that we get that information offline here. So thanks so much for everybody who participated on that. Again, we love hearing that feedback, so keep it coming. Let's talk about next week. So next week, we're going to recap the 5 elements of success and why that systematic approach is important to you and how you're going to develop to be your best self. Also, self-assessment, practical application, and corrections. We're going to be bringing back, Tyler Campbell and Dennis Hillman is going to be back next week and getting more involved in what those things are all about. So, guys, welcome back into the show, and we'll talk about that physical side of things, Tyler, what we're going to be doing next week.
Absolutely. So for starters, guys, as we wrap up the 5 elements of success this week, I just want to reiterate how important these foundational building blocks are for you on your junior golf journey. If you're a little further along in your journey, we encourage you to start to implement all 5 of these into your game. We really think it's going to make a huge difference for you. In the coming episodes, we're really excited to get a little bit more into the technical side and how to make some improvements and some changes in both your physical aspects and your golf game.
Yeah, and Dennis, I know going through these last, or the 5 elements of success in these episodes, I think, maybe it felt a little slow for you, but really it's going to start to accelerate some of this learning on, what it is, what it's all about, meaning how the coaching and the practical application of kind of the corrective, corrections on flaws and things that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. We know the 5 elements. Look, the reason we have this is they all these affect how you play. So it's so important to dive a little bit deeper into these areas, and that's what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks, from diving into prescriptions and drills you can do for your fundamental development, diving into equipment, the mental side. So, again, we're just looking for those marginal gains, even just a slight edge in each area, and it can really propel you forward.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, getting into that and learning more about that and how this actually connects. And I know we've seen a huge uptick in our players' performance, understanding how those all those 5 elements actually work into or work together. So let me remind you that on July 25th, coming soon, we'll have registration up for our PDI full assessment here at the Golf Performance Center. So stay tuned for that. That should be on the site, juniorgolfhub.com, or maybe if you're in the app, the Junior Golf Hub app, look for that. That is going to be starting soon. Also, Nota Gay 3 National Championship, the regional series. We're going to be doing PDI coach-guided assessments there. So we look forward to seeing you guys there. Go to the website, register for those events. We'd like to see you guys continue your development, get some feedback on what you're doing from the self-assessments. Again, we appreciate everybody who's tuned in and actually gone through the self-assessments, done the interview sheets, and also the grit scale test. JGH Coach will be reaching out to you very shortly and giving some more feedback on that as well. Before we end the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Junior Golf Hub, Ethan Allen Preparatory, achieving your greatness in the classroom, on the golf course, and in life. So thanks so much. Guys, thanks so much. Good show. Well done. Well done. Get after it. We'll see you next week.